There are many things in life we don't do. Some things we like to do and we just don't do it. Some things we don't even consider doing. But there's an entire realm of activities or actions we don't take because they are verboten. And why is that? What is stopping us from doing certain things? Well, there are things we don't do because of the law. We just don't walk into a bank and grab money that is not ours because the law says that we shouldn't do that. The law might be a jurisprudence law, or it might be a religious law. The commandments Moses brought down from the mountain, one of them is that you shall not take what is not yours. Well, what happens is time freezes, and now you have a window of time to go into the bank, and nobody will ever notice you getting this money. Not even the surveillance cameras will capture it because it will happen in no time. Would you do it in that case? There's an episode of the old Twilight Zone I saw as a kid, I watched as a kid, where people are presented with a box that has a switch, and if you turn on or press the button, you will get a very large amount of money, and at the same time, somebody you don't know at all will die somewhere in the world, and nobody will ever know that there was a connection between your action and the dying of this person, and you will never know who this person is. So this is one where you could escape the law unless you are observing religious law that you shall not kill. But you maybe don't do these. I wouldn't do it because there's something internal that tells me not to do it. And whereas when the law says not to do something, that's a moral decision, a moral choice. When you don't do something out of your own internal compass, that is an ethical decision. You have your ethics. There are things you don't do because you have values that keep you from doing that. Even if the law won't prosecute you, even if a God or some external force will punish you for doing this, even if there isn't any of that, it's just you that somehow cannot tolerate yourself doing that. There are many forms of predatory behavior that we continue to do because we are predators by genetic design, genetic evolution, but they are unethical. Taking advantage of somebody materially or sexually, that's something that we see a lot. Being in a committed relationship and then opening up to having a relationship with somebody else. Where do you put the limit? You have a relationship, but then you meet new people, sometimes just by chance. But what happens when you meet a person and then you follow this person and provoke a further meeting to get information like a phone number? That's unethical by some standards, at least mine. Now there's a third component, and that is a third way or reason we don't do certain things, and that is social pressure. Because if somebody sees us doing this or is aware of us doing this, then we're going to be told that's wrong. A really good friend will do that for us. A really good friend, when we tell a story that has components of unethical behavior, we say, look, I feel uncomfortable with you doing that. There's a pandemic and there's an order to stay at home, and you're not doing that for some personal gain, for some personal project, because you feel that what you're doing is important and you can get away with it. Well, and then if everybody does that, we all get sick, or we don't follow the bigger societal purpose and this stay-at-home order. Social pressure sometimes comes even from people we don't know. There are societies that are very good at this. I was once in Berlin for a talk with the former mayor of Medellin, who brought up this issue of social pressure, and he asked in the room how many people do things because they follow the law or because of internal decisions, and how many people do it out of social pressure. And surprisingly, there were a large number of people who don't do things out of social pressure in that room, in that place. And that was because then the speaker asked, most of the people who have said that raised their hand because they didn't do something out of social pressure were Germans. And that's a society where social pressure is very strong. You ride public transportation on an honest system where you validate your ticket, and there's nobody checking right there if you're doing that. And there are inspectors who check for tickets from time to time, and this is all over Europe. But I've seen the system at work. In Italy, somebody gets caught, they get a fine, and usually it's a quiet affair. In Germany, I've seen the inspectors really denigrate the person, not verbally, not physically abuse, but it's just the entire thing is really a shaming process, because everybody knows what's happening, and all the people are really looking at the violators as people who have committed a very large sin against society. I have experienced myself that in Germany because sometimes I push a little bit the boundaries. Once I was riding a bicycle and I went around the big wall, the path around the former Berlin Wall. I did this over a couple of days or 3 days, and one day I got to the southernmost part of this path along the Berlin Wall, and it was getting dark, so I decided to come back on the S-Bahn. I had kind of planned to do this because the last station of the S-Bahn was on the southernmost spot, and so it's basically dark, and I get to the station, and then the station is very quiet, and I asked, and it's an attendant, and they told me there was construction on the line, and that the station wasn't functioning, and the S-Bahn was going just to the previous station. And then he tells me that there is a shuttle bus that is going to take people from this closest station to the next one where the S train is running. So I had two options now to do the ride with this bicycle, this beautiful bicycle that didn't have a light. And I don't want to do it at night, and it's quite the distance. So I go to the shuttle bus, and the driver looks at me with my bicycle and says, in Berlin, you cannot put bicycles on a bus. And I was like, well, you're a shuttle bus for the S-Bahn, so technically you are the S-Bahn today. And the guy was really like, what? He he was kind of adamant that I shouldn't take the bike on the bus, and I was adamant that it was okay because he was the S-Bahn today. And I told them, look, if the bus gets full, I get off with the bicycle. But as long as there's a space and I'm not bothering anybody, I'm going to put the bike out of the way and then I'll drive the bus. Which I did, and not many people rode the bus and never bothered anybody. And when I got off the bus, I said, Dankeschön, and the guy said, Bitteschön, and we were all friendly. Now, when I got on the bus with the bicycle, there were a few ladies, old ladies on the bus, and the looks they gave me because I had disputed the statement made by the bus driver, the looks were fulminating. They were sending me straight to hell for having dared to challenge the command from the driver. So we don't do things because it's against the law, or penal law, or religious law, community law. There are residential places that enact regulations for living in them, like in most condominium places in the United States, you cannot hang laundry outdoors. It's considered unsightful, whereas the same people go to places like Italy to take pictures of hanging laundry because they find it so colorful and cute. We don't do things because it's unethical, and that means that it goes against our own internal guidance, our own internal decision process, and there are things that I decide not to do. I decide not to take what is not mine, and even when I have the opportunity to take, just sometimes not to take as a measure of restraint. I committed not to take advantage of anybody materially or morally or much less sexually. I had never paid for sex, and I would never do that because I find that unethical by my standards, even if the law will allow it. And then there's social pressure, which is very strong in some countries and not so much in countries like here in Latin America, where rarely anybody would say anything no matter what you're doing. Actually, most people would be afraid of saying anything. That's also sometimes a personal choice. There are people who are stronger at enforcing. I remember once I was getting to a car with a friend of mine, and we get to the car in the parking lot, and there was a car next to us, and the driver had just finished a drink, and he opened the door and put the cap with the lid and the straw right on the parking lot spot and was ready to drive away. There are people who do that. That's a way for them to get rid of trash. And my friend went and knocked the window and said, excuse me, and grabbed the drink. And when the driver lowered the window, she said, you forgot your drink, sir. You forgot your drink. She has this very disarming way of saying things that the guy said, oh, thank you. That's somebody applying social pressure. She's more than a friend. She's the stepmom to my son, basically. And she has been there for me many times in my life, and I really appreciate that. Many times. So think why you don't do certain things. think about yourself. Think how much are you limited by the law? How much you're limited by your internal compass? How much is what people would say or think if they know you had done it? And the more, in my opinion, the more you can bring in the restraint, the more you do something because it's your internal decision, not because of the law, I think the better off we are as a society. Because externalities can change. The law may not be at work under some circumstances, and this is really important in situations of gang action or mob action. There's this book, Bowling for Columbine, that the main thesis is one that brings back social research that show that people bowling in the time where the bowling was popular had a social effect that was positive for society because people create a community and reset their internal clocks. And then what has happened is that there are things like the mob reaction. This is when the law is not at work or there's a blackout and somebody throws a stone into a window and takes something from a store. And other people see this and they see this person getting away with this, and this person is the first perpetrator who actually broke the window. Now the window is broken and you have a way in. Then other people take his stuff. And then even a very innocent passerby who had never done this on his own, he goes and takes something. And sometimes this is the person that gets caught. Now that's not necessarily the case, but this is the mob reaction. The standard has been lowered, lower and lower, and if we do like the internal guidance, we just start doing something because everybody is doing it. Another extreme sad case is that of mass shootings where Bowling for Columbine basically set a new paradigm, a new form of behavior that has been imitated by other young people, and there's an entire cult of the Columbine shooters that there are people who seek to imitate. And that's because somebody has done it and not necessarily got away with it, but just because it was done before, now the threshold for doing it becomes lower. That's the reason that when you have leaders who insult other people or behave in ways that are denigrating to themselves or to others, that lowers the standard for other people to do the same. That's where the internal clock is important. Sometimes we say that internal clock is a compass, as an opposite reaction to what somebody is doing. My father was an alcoholic, so I find myself very vigilant about drinking. And like now, I have been through a cleansing period for over a month, and who knows how long it's going to go, because I had to show myself I can do it. And I have an internal something keeping me from becoming an alcoholic. My father gave me the wrong example, and he showed me how we can fool ourselves. Self-deception is very powerful. My father would talk about his own father being an alcoholic and how he found that so painful. And when I would point out to him, but Dad, you are the one who gets the problem now, he would say, no, I don't have a problem. I'm a social drinker, which he wasn't. Once, I think he brought up this story more than once, and once he had actually fallen into the bathtub drunk and spent the night in the bathtub because he was so wasted. And even that behavior, he didn't think he was the kind of alcoholic his own father had been. Granted, my grandfather would waste an entire salary on the way home going to bars and getting drunk and just buying drinks for other people. And my father felt that he had supported the family, his family, and he did. And I so appreciate that. So, yes, different form of behavior, but it's still possessed by the same force. And wonder, ask yourself, think profoundly about what guides you, what are your limitations. I'm doing that myself now, and realizing that I continue to have behavior that is unethical. I have an intimate conversation now, no relationship because we are far apart now, but I had an intimate relationship with somebody who was in a relationship that was ending, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we start loosening up standards very easily, but she's still in that relationship now. And so I'm going to be more resolute myself. And it's not about punishing ourselves. Let's be careful with this. It's about having a life that we value, a life that we are proud of, that we want God, if we believe in God, to be proud of us, or we want our parents who, if we believe that see us from heaven or from somewhere, to be proud of us. And then I want my children, my son, to be proud of myself. And I just want to be proud of myself. I want to say I have had a good life and I have been a good person because of what's in my heart. What's in your heart is what counts, as Martin Luther King so eloquently said in that beautiful sermon of his shortly before he was shot. There are sermons by Martin Luther King everybody knows, or his speeches everybody is familiar with, we shall overcome. And, but there's this sermon where he basically is saying that life is a struggle, a failure. It's the life is a succession of broken dreams. We know about the I have a dream speech, but this is about, he's saying that life is going to be a succession of broken dreams. He starts with David and the building of the temple and how he failed to do that. And he goes on talking about many examples about how Gandhi failed to have a united India because Pakistan separated from India. But in a profoundly emotional way, touching way, he keeps saying that what is important is what is in your heart. That's what it counts. It doesn't matter if you don't fulfill your dream or your duty, but it's in your heart. It's in your heart to be a good person. And you may fail sometimes, but what's in your heart is what counts. So bring to your heart these profound values of what you don't do, not because it's the law, not because the cops are going to pick you up, not because God is going to punish you, not because somebody is going to call you and tell you you're doing something wrong. No, it's just you. You are the one who is loving yourself in a way that keeps you from hurting others, because when you're hurting others, you're hurting yourself. There are no others, it's just a one big self. It's a divine universe, a divine paradise we live in. And when we honor it, we're honoring ourselves. And when we destroy it or hurt others, we are hurting ourselves.